Hi guys, I welcome you all to the next lecture in our anthropology series. So we are continuing with our 9.7. We are studying the biocultural adaptations. We have done our two stresses, that is the cold stress as well as the heat stress, and therein we have studied two things: biological adaptation, biological or physiological, anything you can say, and the cultural. Okay? So you know that man in different environments and in different extreme environments can successfully adapt itself and has adapted itself. That is one of the reasons of success of human beings as a species, okay, more than any other animal perhaps, right? So we have studied all of this and how man has utilized both the culture and biology, right? But when we come to the topic of the day, that is response towards the high altitude regions, you will see that this is one of those stresses, or you can say extreme stresses, where man cannot do much with the help of the culture, and we'll see how. So if you have to survive in a environment of high altitude, you know your body needs to physiologically adapt more than culture, because culture here comes as a or acts as a limitation, and your body can't do much with the help of the culture. So a high altitude environment exerts multiple stresses on human, which includes hypoxia, more intense solar radiation, cold, low humidity, a reduced nutritional base, and a rough terrain. So now you should remember when we go to a higher altitude region, there are multiplicity of things that work. That is, first thing is the hypoxia. Okay, now what is hypoxia? Just listen to that. Hypoxia is, you can say, decrease in the partial pressure of oxygen in atmosphere proportionally to increase in the altitude, which consequently leads to reduction in O2 or oxygen hemoglobin saturation. So basically क्या है, our body, if I have to very you can say simply explain it to you कि what is it. See, हमारी, this is a human, okay, let me make it properly then. If I have to make a human being, ठीक है, our body has different organs, ठीक है, our body has different organs inside us, ठीक है, ठीक है. My drawing is very bad guys, okay. So the thing is, right, so what happens is we breathe, ठीक है, we breathe, take in oxygen, ठीक है. This oxygen through our bloodstream, or you can say through the binding with the hemoglobin, has to reach all our body muscles, organs, tissues, right? So it has to reach to the even to the peripheral parts of our body, ठीक है. And with the help of the RBCs, wherein the hemoglobin is, it reaches the all parts of the body, and that is how our body efficiently works, ठीक है. But when you go to high altitude regions, the oxygen, ठीक है, has very less, the air is thin, and air has very less oxygen in it, okay. So when there is less oxygen, there will be less binding of O2 to hemoglobin, and there will be difficulty in reaching the different parts of the body, right? So hypoxia is the decrease in that partial pressure, okay. That partial pressure decreases, matlab you can say the you are unable to take in that oxygen, ठीक है, and there is reduction in the O2 and hemoglobin saturation. So this in turn interferes with the oxygen acquisition at the cardiopulmonary level and utilization by the cells. तो obviously पहले O2 hemoglobin saturation कम होगा, ठीक है, then through your blood stream या through your cardiopulmonary, ठीक है, इट वहाँ पे भी इसका लेवल रिड्यूस हो जाएगा, देन सेल्स टिश्यूज़ को भी लेवल रिड्यूस हो जाएगा, तो इट हैज़ अ ओवरऑल बेयरिंग ऑन योर बॉडी, ठीक है. सो दिस मल्टी फेसेटेड इफेक्ट ऑफ हाइपोक्सिया ऑल्सो मैनिफेस्ट थ्रू increased rates of infant mortality, miscarriage among people residing at the higher elevation. So now basically what is happening, you are unable to take in the kind of oxygen your body requires, and then it has obviously multifaceted effects on your body, right? That results in infant mortalities, that results in miscarriages among women, ठीक है ना. So these are the kind of problems that can happen. So hypoxia exerts greater degree of stress on physiological function and is not easily modified by the cultural behavior. Now the culture cannot make you take in more oxygen, right? Or its binding with the hemoglobin is not going to increase, right? Because at a higher altitude the air is thin, ठीक है ना. Air is thin, oxygen is low, so then your body capacity to take in and bind it with the hemoglobin and provide it to the different tissues of the body becomes difficult. So therein culture cannot help you, ठीक है. So culture becomes a very secondary way to adapt to higher altitude areas. So one point is this, ठीक है. First point, I think there is no doubt about it. Now we have talked about ki what is hypoxic conditions and what all is there. Now what happens because of it. First to humne bola there are more chances of infant mortality, right? Then miscarriages also increase due to that. Then there are some other things that can happen. Then decreased fetal growth due to impaired maternal fetal oxygen transportation also results into low weight birth babies. Okay, अब क्या हो रहा है, what is happening, अभी क्या है, what is happening, देखो, mother, if there is a mother who carries a child in a fetus, ठीक है, now everything including the nutrition and everything is supplied through this through the mother only to the baby, right? Till the time the baby is inside the womb of the mother, everything is supplied by the mother. But when there is so much of you can say oxygen there is so much of pressure that is there because of the lesser oxygen, right, or hypoxic conditions, in turn it will affect the baby. That means if mother is having a problem in taking in the oxygen, so there will be less supply of oxygen to the baby also, and it results in the low birth weight of the children. So either to miscarriage ho jayega. If miscarriage is not happening, that would adversely affect the health of the child in the sense of ki birth weight there are often times the birth weight is lower in the children, ठीक है. So acclimatization to high altitude is a complex phenomena, because not only the thin air is a problem or hypoxic conditions is a problem, the problem is also that direct solar radiation hota hai, so sometimes you feel that also. Then there is problems, the rough terrain is there, theek hai na, higher altitude pe it is difficult to go there, reach there, stay there, theek hai na. People walk so much because ghar ek jaise there is a hill and there'll be one house here, there'll be one house here, like that, right? So tough conditions to survive. And then nutrition is also low, because at such a hilly area you cannot do even agriculture also mostly, right? So difficult hota hai, it's difficult. So the man, how it does, it has to modify and synchronize interdependence of the respiratory, circulatory and cardiovascular system to improve oxygen delivery and utilization. So basically we respire and through which we take in oxygen, then we have to circulate that oxygen to the body parts, and cardiovascular muscles are also used because the blood is actually pumped through the heart, right, through your cardiovascular system, and through that it reaches different parts of the body. In this blood you have the RBCs where your hemoglobin is present, which binds the oxygen and takes it to the different parts of the body. So in hypoxic condition, this full system of respiration, circulation and cardiovascular phenomena has to be interdependent, synchronized in a way that it has to modify the whole thing. ठीक है ना, the whole thing has to be modified, that then you are going to successfully adapt to the environment. So when exposure of high altitude happens to lowlanders, now what is a lowlander? Basically, if I say this is a, there is this people who live here at the higher altitude and there are people who live here, so they will be called as lowlanders because they live on lowlands, and they'll be called as highlanders because they live on high lands, ठीक है, or elevated lands, ठीक है. So you can remember like that. So on exposure of high altitude, lowlanders acquire short term modification or partial acclimatization in response to hypoxia, which includes increase in respiration rate, heart rate and production of RBCs. So now what is it saying? Basically you should understand that what is it trying to say. Acha, many of you must have visited Ladakh. So for India, Ladakh can be a very good example. When you go to Ladakh, you see that, you know, in the shortest time your body tries to acclimatize to that environment because there is thin air, so you try to increase the respiration rate, you try to breathe heavily because you are not like a classic highlander, so your body has not adapted to it from the starting, ठीक है. You are going to a new place, and then when there is a dearth of oxygen that your body requires, you start to breathe heavily, so increase हो जाता है respiration rate. Similarly, heart rate will increase, right, because you have to send that to your body also. Production of RBCs increase because more RBC, more binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin, so that will also happen, ठीक है ना. So this is your immediate response, but if you stay there for like 3, 4, 5, 10 days, you see that there is a difference. You start to acclimatize and you become normal, your breathing becomes normal, your heart rate becomes normal, and that is what the acclimatization is all about. So oxygen transporting protein hemoglobin, while high altitude dwellers adapt to hypoxia during their lifetime as they mature. So that is what it is saying, ki if you are a new person, if you go, so these are the changes that will happen to your body in the shorter time. So now if I have to say, basically if I have to if we have to summarize in a way, what is basically the high altitude stress. Let me write it like this: high altitude, okay, it had to come here, high altitude stress. Basically high altitude stress is all about, mostly about hypoxic conditions, ठीक है. So therein what changes happen if you are there, what are the kind of changes that can happen? So the changes can be the change in kidneys. So your kidney produces, you can say, erythropoietin, ठीक है. This erythropoietin basically increase the level of RBC count. That means RBC thoda increases the RBC, ठीक है, and the hemoglobin level, ठीक है. This erythropoietin helps in increasing the RBC and hemoglobin, which will in turn bind more oxygen so that your body parts can receive them nicely, right. So one change can be this. The second change would be the change in your lungs, ठीक है. So increase in the respiration rate. So that would be the second change that you can remember. Then the change in the cells, because as we have talked about, all the thing is happening because the cells, our body requires oxygen, right. So what changes happens in the cell, because when your body cells know that there is less oxygen that is getting provided to yourself, so what our cells do, they also increase the mitochondria number. Mitochondria हमारे cells के organelles होते हैं, they are present in the cells, they increase in number, which provides in turn more energy to the cells. So इससे this is how our body tries to adapt. ठीक है. So I hope यहाँ पे there is not much of a doubt of what I have tried to say. These are the changes that our body can take. ठीक है. Now let's talk about the genetic changes also. ठीक है, because as we know that if a Highlander who is born and brought up in the highlands only, so obviously they will have certain genetic changes, right? So उनकी body थोड़ा lowlander से different होगी. So that which we were telling, they can be the short term also. The ones that we were talking about right now, they were more of the short term acclimatization process also. ठीक है. But people who are living or highlanders only, born brought up in a highland only, they have certain genetic changes. And what are they? Let's see. So first you can say that their chest size increases. So what happens when the chest size increases? They are able to take, देखो, if the chest size increases, you can take in more oxygen, right? You will breathe, you will have more capacity to take in oxygen. So this kind of change you can see in the Peruvian, Andes population and even the Himalayan population. ठीक है, जो हिमालयाज में हाई ऑल्टीट्यूड में रहते हैं, all of them. Then lower body size, this is also a very important adaptation. So you see उनका body size छोटा हो जाता है. When body size reduces, the need for taking in more oxygen also reduces. So इसमें you can take the example of Sherpas of Nepal. They are very petite in size. ठीक है. So this is also a very important adaptation. That means their body size has reduced. So less requirement of oxygen automatically. ठीक है. Then shortened nose to muzzle passages. That means उनके there is a change in the nose anatomy also. ठीक है. So that they you know, there's a, when we respire, there is a process of taking in oxygen and you know, breathing out carbon dioxide, right? So when their noses are shaped or nose anatomy is changed in a way that they respire out less, ठीक है, so that they are able to take in more oxygen and respire less, ठीक है. And then there is, so you can say the most, by far the most important genetic adaptation or change that has happened to them is capacity of hemoglobin to extract oxygen at lower partial pressure. So basically what is the thing? They are different from us in the way that now their hemoglobin has more capacity to take out the oxygen, ठीक है ना. So they are different from us because क्योंकि वहाँ thin air है, they need to take oxygen from that only. So their body has adapted in a way that their hemoglobin can extract more oxygen in the partial pressure also. So I hope there is no doubt about this, right? So these are the Sherpas of Nepal, ठीक है. So I think there should be no doubt about the genetic changes. And then the high altitude normal hypoxic condition also, you can take a screenshot also just to keep it in your mind, ठीक है. So now let's go to the next thing. So the earlier the age, actually I've told you everything, I've summed up everything, but we can just, this slide is we have to read this slide. In this slide there are a lot of examples of different populations living in different higher altitudes and how they have adapted, like the ones that we have studied. So you can say these could be genetic plus the changes that they have. So the earlier the age or the longer the duration of stay in a high altitude, the greater the environmental influence on body dimension and respiratory function. Obviously baat hai, the more you live there, the more kind of stress you feel and the more your body will be adapted to it. So the high altitude native Indians, or the ones who live in the Andes, have larger chests, we have talked about it. Later greater lung capacity, we have talked about this, ठीक है ना. So more surface area in the capillaries of the lung which facilitate the transfer of oxygen. Basically क्या करेगा, larger lung capacity will help you to take in more oxygen, ठीक है. Then the children of high altitude Peruvians who grow up in the lowland doesn't show this larger chest. That means, for example, if you are a person of a highland, that means you are genetically, your forefathers, even your parents were highlanders, but now they have settled in a lowland, ठीक है, and now they reproduce and have a child here. So will this child also have a larger chest capacity like the ones, like his forefathers or maybe the parents? No. So this shows that this genetic change is only there till the time they are in the higher altitudes, ठीक है. That means this is not a permanent change, and this is a very, you can say, change to adapt to a very stressful condition. That means ऐसा change is not something that will be there in the populations of lowland also. Similarly, if there is a population of a lowland, ठीक है, there is a population from the lowland with lower chest capacities now go to the highland and successfully reproduce there. So maybe their child will have the higher lung capacity. So that means again this is all dependent upon the environment, ठीक है. Okay. So then larger chest among Indians, which was considered to be a genetic adaptation, in fact presents acclimatization which develops early in childhood and persists for the lifetime of the individual. That means ये genetic लगता है, but you can say it is developed very early in the life of a child. So ये बहुत early phase of the life में develop होता है. Then the Spetians are the people living in the Spiti Valley of you can say of Himalayas, जो Himachal and all में, who inhabit higher altitudes in the northwest Himalayas, showed larger chest capacity, ठीक है. So you can take this example also. And then there is larger chest circumference of boards of Ladakh, because also they are also living in very stressful conditions, so उनका भी ज़्यादा है, ठीक है. Then there are Rajis, a hunter-gatherer tribal population of Uttaranchal, showed lower chest circumference compared to the mid-altitude population. So these are certain examples that you can quote in your exam, ठीक है. And basically this is this much only, the whole thing is this much only, ठीक है. So I hope there is no doubt, and we talked about this कि there is less that you can do when it comes to the higher altitude with relation to the cultural adaptations, because more genetic or you can say physiological changes are required in your body. So I hope there is no doubt about it and everything is clear. And tomorrow we'll start we'll see what we have to do tomorrow. We'll start with the new chapter. So I hope you guys liked it, and if you did, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.